Good afternoon and welcome to the Dorset Church, live from the Dorset Church. This is something new for the new year. We call this the Lunchtime Mini Concert. And that was Little Prelude in D minor by Johann Sebastian Bach from the Notebook for Wilhelm Friedman Bach. That was his second-born son. We're going to do a bunch of Baroque dances today, and the next one is an Allemande by Handel that was originally written for harpsichord. This next dance is a jig in D minor, also by George Frederick Handel. A jig is a type of dance that came from England, but was also brought over to France. A lot of composers would include these in their suites for dance. I'm sort of doing a mixed up suite for dance because these are from all different composers. So the jig is a fun folk dance to dance, but people in the courts dance them as well. You may be wondering, where were these Baroque dances used? Well, think Cinderella. These types of dances were for the rich and the wealthy, and they would hire musicians to come in and play them. So sometimes this would be done by harpsichord, sometimes it would be a full ensemble, violins and all sorts of stringed instruments. This is the jig in D minor. So not all the dances were lively and fun like that. Sometimes you have to have a slow dance in there. This is how the future kingdoms were made, romances were began, and so we're going to do a Sarabanda in G minor by Domenico Zipoli. This piece was written for organ and cembalo. We're going to approximate that with my chimes. Now you'll have to imagine them playing at various points during there because I have both hands on the keyboard and I don't have a hand free to actually play the chimes. By now you may have noticed that there are a lot of repeated sections in these dances. Baroque actually had a lot of rules about how you could arrange your dances, and they had to have a certain number of measures. And that lesson was brought home to me when I started working for the Dorset Ballet Theatre, because it's very important for the dancers doing their dance moves that it takes a certain number of bars, and there are different pieces for different types of dances. This next one is called a bourrée, and a bourrée is a dance where the dancers hop from one foot to the other very quickly. You can imagine that as I'm playing this. Thank you for joining me. I have one more piece to play by the composer Telemann. It's called an Aria in A major. And I just want to tell you a little bit about Telemann that you may not already know, because it turns out he and I have a lot in common. He was a composer and a multi-instrumentalist. I play lots of instruments as well. He was almost completely self-taught in music, and believe it or not, I am self-taught in most of what I know about music. He became a composer against his family's wishes. Well, my family didn't really have a hard time with that, so it differences end there. And then he entered the University of Leipzig to study law. Well, okay, I have nothing in common with him there. I never studied law. But he eventually settled on a career in music. And yes, I did settle on a career in music. He held important positions in several German cities and finally settled in Hamburg in 1721, where he became musical director of that city's 5 main churches. While Telemann's career prospered, his personal life was always troubled. His first wife died less than 2 years after their marriage, and his second wife had extramarital affairs and accumulated a large gambling debt before leaving him. If you know my wife, we don't share that in common either. Here's Aria in A major. Thank you for joining me on this lunchtime concert. Hope to see you again next week.